Hello, everybody. Welcome to this ISNS Wisdom session. I am really excited for this session today. We're going to be talking about predictive thinking, and I'm excited. And my highly probable prediction is that you're going to walk away with some amazing takeaways today. I'm going to be your host today. I'm Jason Schneider, and my co-host today will be Henrik. Henrik, you want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, hello everybody. Really nice to see everybody here.
And so before we get started, if you can, please make sure to turn on your cameras. We have 90 minutes for our session today, and we're going to get started out strong introducing the institutes. So Henrik, I'll pass it on to you and just see if I can share my screen here to present the institutes. There we go.
Okay,
Henrik.
so let's get some celebrations from each institute as we go. So let's start with the Institute of NeuroSemantics Africa. So turn off your mic and turn on and really.
Hello.
Institute of NeuroSemantics Australia.
It's the middle of the night there.
Okay, it's not very many here, maybe, but how about Institute of NeuroSemantics Brazil?
Michael and Geraldine are there now.
Bom dia.
Okay, let's try this one. Institute of NeuroSemantics Egypt, Middle East, and North Africa.
Yay!
Okay, now we have Institute of NeuroSemantics Scandinavia. Yes.
That's Henrik.
Yes, that's me. Institute of NeuroSemantics Hong Kong and China.
I see a couple of them. Hello.
Gemma is here, yeah?
Yes.
And we got Hong Kong.
And Institute of NeuroSemantics Indonesia. Hello. Institute of NeuroSemantics Latin America.
Hola.
Institute of NeuroSemantics Malaysia.
Asia.
Ooh, that was powerful. And we have Institute of NeuroSemantics United States of America. Okay, so that was all. So I hand it back over to you, Jason.
All right. So, well, we're glad you guys are all here, no matter what time of day, afternoon, evening it is for you in your time zone. Let's see here. So, well, in a moment, we're going to get started with the session. Again, just another reminder, if you can, please turn on your video. It's great to have feedback. You know, the second best thing to being live in the room is at least being able to see you alive where you are. Keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat throughout this entire session. And Henrik or I or Michael will get to them at some point. And of course, feel free to share your health fantastics, your celebrations, your realizations in the chat as well. So let's just give a warm round of applause for Michael to present for us today the topic of predictive thinking.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jason and Henry, and everybody else. Today, we're going to talk about predictive thinking. And I think the reason this is so important for each and every one of us is we're going to spend the rest of our lives in the future. And who'd like to have a bright future that you can count on? Well, that's what we're talking about when it comes to predictive thinking. Who would like to have that assurance that as you move into the future, day by day, week by week, that it's going to be a joyful anticipation of the events that you can make happen? And that's what we're talking about. So I've subtitled this Future, Here I Come, because as on the screen in front of you, your brain is an anticipation machine. That's what Daniel Dennett wrote in his book on consciousness, that it's the way the brain works. Our brain, and therefore our mind, is always thinking forward about what could be or what might be into this unknown future. As I've been looking at predictive thinking, I found more than 30 words that are synonyms of predicting or forecasting or anticipating the future. We'll be looking at a lot of those words as we go. It's like our mind is so focused on what's going to happen, and we cannot not think about the future. So the question is, what is the quality of your thinking about the future? So that's our next slide. You cannot not think about the future. As a temporal being who lives in the concept of time, thinking about the future is inevitable. You cannot not do that. So the only question is the quality of your thinking. And here's the bad news, which is the next slide. The bad news is that that without training, most of us uh, have low quality predictive thinking. As you can see the list of words here: wishing and wanting, projecting wishes and hopes, prophesying the future, mind reading it, worrying about it, demanding and expecting, conjecturing, procrastinating, just guessing. So, unless you're trained in predictive thinking, and who is trained in that? Who trains predictive thinking so that we can do a good job of it? If we don't, then we just do childish thinking. And that's what this slide here indicates, just childish thinking about the future. Now, the next slide raises the quality of the thinking about predictive thinking. And now, instead of just wishing, we set a desire, we learn how to use our imagination, we learn how to detect patterns about what's going on, trends, and then learning how to do anticipating of trends and possibilities, making educated guesses, uh, prospecting the future. And so this raises it a little bit, but the next slide takes us to a higher level of predictive thinking. And so here are some of the qualities of high level predictive thinking as we infer implications. So this is the skill of inferring, which is one of the basic thinking skills. Then we can speculate on possibilities and do some probability thinking. We can narrate some possible scenarios and anticipate what could happen, what might happen, do some risk management, do some due diligence with those scenarios as to different ways the future could go. So all of this is higher level predictive thinking. Our next slide, the bottom line is if you predict like a child, uh, you'll have that low level quality. But as an adult or as an expert, so it all depends on the quality of your predictive thinking. And that means your knowledge about events, what causes them, contributing factors of events, your skills of being able to anticipate and do the due diligence. So all of it depends upon the quality of your predictive thinking. What would you guess your predictive thinking quality is right now? Well, the next slide is why bother? And we've already said this, you're going to live the rest of your life in the future, and you cannot not predict the future. And at best, all of us can do some forecasting of general trends. So this is why to do it. Why bother with it? And when it comes to why bothering with it, the question is, how are you oriented to your future? So this slide that's in front of you now gives us 5 things you can do that begins to give you some control to manage your future. So identifying what you want. So that's where it all begins. What do you want? And in a minute, we'll have a slide and begin to choose some of the things that you might want for your future. Then as you start planning it and learn how to do high quality planning, then engage in the actions that's going to bring that about. Get the feedback for how you're doing, what's working, what's not working. And then the ability to hope that's based upon those kinds of established facts. What we cannot not ask are these questions. These are the questions in your mind that drive you to always be thinking about the future. What's going to happen? Where are we going? Where am I going? What is most likely to happen? What seems to be trending right now? What's the probability that any given uh, identification is going to happen? And will the future be positive or negative for me? We cannot not ask these questions. These questions indicate your mind operating and doing predictive thinking as you anticipate the future. So, in preparation for the future, here's a lot of these ways of thinking and many of the 30 words that we have for anticipating the future. It begins with wishing, which grows up to wanting and grows up to now a full-fledged desire, guessing, estimating, wondering, anticipating, using daydreaming and imagining to begin creating those scenarios, forecasting, planning, troubleshooting, hypothesizing, and then establishing things to hope for that are probable and likely. The problem is if you start demanding the future and you get into what we call expectation. Expectation is a disease of the mind. And if you have expectations of the future, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So disappointment, where does it come from? Why do people get disappointed? Well, because we didn't just anticipate and didn't just keep with probability thinking, we started expecting, and that becomes a disease. So as you can see, there's lots of mental energy that all of us expend when we think about what's going to happen later today, what's going to happen tomorrow. And so we're always predicting. But the problem is human fallibility. We're always predicting and get it wrong. And when I say we, I mean the human race. So here's some examples. Charles Duell, in 1899, he was the person in charge, the supervisor of patents and trademarks. And he said, everything that can be invented has been invented. How wrong was he? William Wright, looking back, he said in 1901, I said to my brother Orville that man would not be able to have flight for the next 50 years. Ever since, I have distrusted myself and have avoided all predictions. Then there is this quotation. America's intelligent experts failed to predict the overthrow of the Shah of Iran, the attack on Kuwait by Iraq, and the collapse of the Soviet communism and the USSR. So we make predictions, but we get it wrong so often. Two more in the next slide. There's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. How wrong was he? Bill is the greatest father and husband I know. No one is more faithful, true, and loyal than him. Hillary Clinton. So predicting human fallibility makes it so that we get it wrong. So the question is, why do we get it wrong so often about our predictions? And of course, the answer is our thinking. We fail to do high quality predictive thinking. And in failing to do it, we're making several assumptions. We're making assumptions about cause effect, that we look at some cause, we think it is the cause. We make that assumption. It may not be. It may be a contributing factor. It may be just a factor that arises and there's no causation going on. We assume the inevitability of trends. And we see a trend, we think it's a strong trend, it's a growing trend, it has to continue. We forget the volatility of life and the pervasiveness of change. We also forget that there's so many variables in the unknown future. We're going to get to that in just a moment. So many variables, and because there's so many variables, that's what creates the situation for probability thinking and no guarantees. We also forget that we don't know what we don't know. And that's the unknown unknowns. And taking that in consideration will help us to not get it wrong so often. Then, to make matters worse, of course, is the ever increasing level of change. Change is occurring faster and faster and faster. I'm told that there's 8 million pages of text added to the internet every single day. So who's going to keep up with all that? So change is inevitable and it's increasing, and that makes it more and more difficult to predict. So let's make this personal now. Here's a list of things on this slide. What would you like to predict? So what would you like to predict about your health or your well-being? I predict that in 2 hours, I'm going to go to the gym and exercise. And because it's a short-term prediction, it's probably 95% probability, likelihood. Oh, there's things that could interrupt it. But when I start thinking about my health, my well-being a month from now, 12 months from now, 5 years from now, what would you like to predict that you'll have in terms of your health and your well-being, your prosperity and financial well-being? So that's going to take longer. It depends upon your expenses, your income, your job, your skills, the demand for your skills. It's going to depend upon whether you have active sources of income, passive sources of income. And as we go down the list, your legacy, so that you end life well lived, your loving relationships with family, with friends, with your special one, making a significant contribution. What would you like to predict? Would you like to make that prediction a year from now? Maybe a contribution you'd like to make 5 years from now. The enjoyment of activities that you find meaningful. What do you predict about your ability to enjoy life, take pleasure in everyday common things? Smart decisions about the choices you make. So pick out something that you'd like to predict and how far you predict it. We're here in Brazil right now, and Monday, which is 2 days from now, I predict we're going to do the training Thinking for Humans. I would guess it's a 95% chance, a likelihood that we'll do that training. I'm going to predict, because we're in Brazil, we're not going to start on time. I'm going to predict that I'll start at 9 and do some things, but that most of the people won't get there till 9:15, 9:30, maybe a little bit later. Just so taking into consideration some of the facts, some of the factors, some of the variables, predicting. I'm going to predict that in August, I'll be in, Geraldine and I will be in Egypt to do the Meta NLP. It would be the last time I do that. I'm going to predict that that's probably an 80% chance of going, likelihood right now. All kinds of things could interrupt it, from earthquakes to wars to plane crashes to all kinds of things. But probably a good 80% chance that the likelihood it'll come off. In September, we'll be back in Mexico for PCMC, the first week of September. I'm going to predict that's a good 85% chance of being a go. So predicting. The next skill, the next slide here is predictive thinking. It is based on all the other forms of thinking. And if you're not familiar with the essential thinking skills, we're talking about considering, questioning, doubting, detailing, and distinguishing. And those are the essential. That gives you the critical thinking skills. The Eureka thinking skills starts with inferring and then ordering your representations, then creating, metaphoring, and synergizing. Those are the creative thinking skills which enable us to create new and wonderful things. The executive thinking skill starts with reflecting, the meta reflection, the self-reflective consciousness, reflecting, then learning, then deciding, then discerning, and then the B cognition, or the synergizing and the the valuing of thinking in and of itself. And so predictive thinking needs all of those. So in that sense, predictive thinking, while it's inescapable, to do it high quality, really we need all of these thinking skills. And then the predictive thinking is a start of all of those others. So next slide, what do we mean by predicting? What we mean by making known in advance, foretelling, to indicate in advance. So we're thinking forward into the future. We're making a guess about the trajectory of events. That's what we're talking about. And sometimes, the next slide, sometimes it's easy to predict. When it's short term, like predicting 2 hours from now, I'll go to the gym. When it's short term, easy to predict what's going to happen. Easy to predict what's going to happen the rest of the day or tomorrow. Fewer variables will come into play. But when it comes to long-term future, now it's not so easy. Now it's quite challenging. Let's think about predictive thinking on a continuum. And so to the far left there, you have no idea what's going to happen, no idea about the trends or the variables or the people involved or the actions required. And so you might be quite confused. How do I create passive income so that I can have wealth and not be living paycheck to paycheck? And then we move into the area of wishing and anticipating, wanting. And a little bit further on, now we're using our imagination to figure out how am I going to make this work and forecast it and moving into hope. So that's the continuum. And what we want to do is to move further along that continuum so that we can really do it well. So the variables, and the slide in front of you are some of the variables that's going to be involved. Most of these are external variables. And we could add to all of these restraints and limitations in reality. And the more variables, the less predictable the activities and the streamline of activities becomes possible. The more variables there are, the more you cannot guarantee anything. Now you have to just make it a probability guess, a likelihood. So now luck comes into the play. And that's our next slide. Quoting from an Old Testament verse in the Bible, Ecclesiastes 9:11. I returned and saw under the sun, that is in life, that the race is not to the swift, the battle is not to the strong, neither bread to the wise, nor riches to men of understanding, nor favor to men of skill. Now you would think all of those variables would raise the probability that the swift runner is going to win the race. The strong person will win the battle. The wise person will be able to make his daily bread. But time and chance happens to them all. And so here's the introduction of luck. A lot of times, what happens in the future is going to be the fortunate of luck that happens to us. And so internal variables. Next slide. So internal variables would be the variables inside you, your intentions, your beliefs, your mindset, whether you're positive or negative, optimistic or pessimistic, whether you know how to do consequential thinking through, if I do this, it'll lead to this, which will lead to this. And that's all that mental calculation, taking into account biases and distortions, taking into account your state, taking into account your health, your well-being, your physical abilities. So given all of these variables, now we can ask some personal questions like, what are some of the patterns that you see around you or in you in your life? Because all of these variables will play an important part. What intentions have you set? What beliefs do you have as you anticipate the future? a lot of disappointments, a lot of expectations that lead to disappointments can get people to just quit trying to figure out the future and just let it be, which then, of course, puts you as a victim of whatever is going to happen and the activities of other people, as well as giving up your ability to take the actions that's going to formulate and control your future. So, a lot of variables. That leads us to probability thinking. So, probability thinking is really a high level predictive thinking skill as you take into consideration uh, the realization there's no guarantee, the future is unknown, and at best, you make an educated guess about the future. And so now we ask the question, what's the probability? Where would you put the probability level? Is it 50%? Is it 70%? 90%? It's never going to be 100. So what are the variables that play a role in that? And when you start thinking in terms of probabilities, likelihoods, now you can take control over your anticipations, and you can do some scenario uh, uh, designing to figure out what due diligences you need to do and what risk management to take. So raising the probability of getting the future that you want goes back to your choices and decisions, your intentions, your plans, your skills, the social context, doing due diligence with the risk management, the contingencies, that is, plans A and B and C if something happens, and the scenario planning. So all of this is part of probability thinking, which when you do that, you're going to take much more control over your anticipation of the events of the future. So what's predictable, what's not? Short-term items are much more predictable. Long-term, not so much. And so you can see on this slide the things we can predict and that are predictable to some extent, and then the things that are just not predictable because too many variables, or the variables and the events are too fluid and volatile. So how do we break into the future? Our next slide. How do we break into the future? Let me contrast two things. The second law of thermodynamics says everything in the universe is running down. Well, if everything is running down, and most of us know that in terms of our health and our well-being, that it's running down, how do we run it up? How do we avoid the entropy and go against it? Well, then that's the first law of consciousness. And one way to express that is toasters are appearing on planet Earth. Toasters are appearing because people are creating. People are using their consciousness to invent and to create new things. They're organizing and ordering things. And so can you and I. You and I can plan events so that the entropy that we deal with the second law of thermodynamics, that entropy can be contradicted and can be countered so that things don't have to run down, but we can keep developing our mind, keep developing our bodies, keep working on events so that we can develop them in a much better way. So the best way to predict the future, create it. So how would you like to create your future? It's going to take all of these things listed here: intentionality, planning, taking action, adjusting, persisting. It's going to take all of that. And you can see in small, very, very small print here, you can do something audacious. That should be put in really large print and made really bold. You can do something audacious. So the next slide, I've left it blank. What will you do today that's audacious? What will you do today that's bold, that's brave, maybe shameless, daring? What one thing? Because when you do, you're going to be countering the entropy of life. if everything is running down, then when you take bold action to go to the gym, to read a book, to talk to someone, to do a coaching session, to receive a coaching session, when you do something bold and brave, you are contradicting the entropy of life and beginning to create the future and making the future the way you want it to be. The next slide. Let me mention the audacity of the well-formed outcome questions. They're really audacious because it starts with, what do you want? And when do you want that? And why is that important to you? And what do you have to do to get what you want? And this thing that you want, do you have a plan? Are you looking for feedback? Anything stop you? Do you have the resources? Use the well-formed outcome questions. The well-formed outcome questions give us the audacity to face the future and to make the future the way we want it to be. Again, it's not guarantee, but a high probability. So this is one way to begin to think predictively inside out. The next one be scenario planning. That is, just plan a scenario. What are the possible scenarios that could happen as you entertain? It could go this way or that way or third way. Then each way, as you play it out, what are the risks involved? What contingency plans would you need to have? What skills and resources would you need to develop? And so scenario planning helps us to start to take control of the future that we want. The next slide are 7 questions. In 1991, when I started my wealth creation plan, and that's now nearly 35 years ago, I was sick and tired of living paycheck to paycheck. And so I decided I'm going to make a plan. So I started with these 7 questions. And take a snapshot of these 7 questions. These 7 questions with any plan enable you to do effective planning. So that's what I did. I started a plan. I planned to use real estate. I got into real estate and I used these questions. I wrote them out. I had them on a piece of paper over my computer. And every day I looked at them. Do you have a plan? Do you know how to make a plan? Do you know how to stick to the plan? So these 7 questions helped me to create that plan. That it took 10 years to get it to be well established. By the 15th year, it was making a passive income. And so creating the future that you want is in your hands if you know how to use predictive thinking. And using predictive thinking essentially involves asking lots of questions. And here are 7 really powerful questions. The next slide, let your predictive thinking guide you. And the rest of that sentence should be by asking questions of reality. So bullet point, what question would challenge my basic assumptions and my blind spots? What questions am I probably not asking that I need to ask? What questions will stimulate me to do new thinking? So this is the beginning place. The next slide, note the base rate. And base rate means know what is the regular predictability, the regular probability of your profession. Coach U, a number of years ago, did a questionnaire and found out that 80% of the people who went through coach training, 80% of them, 2 years later, were not even trying to have a coaching practice anymore. 80% failure rate in 2 years. With regard to restaurants, 60% fail in 3 years. Every restaurant that begins, 60% chance it'll fail in the first 3 years. So knowing the base rate and knowing what you need to do to contradict that base rate of whatever the events are that you're wanting to do. The next slide, and distinguish between the known and the unknown. So what do you know? And that's where the knowledge comes in. What do you know about whatever it is that you're wanting to do? What do you not know? So when I began the real estate and I had my first renters, there were lots of things I knew because I had rented for 20 years of my life. There were a lot of things I didn't know. And I started discovering them by the things that went wrong. The things that went wrong, the feedback told me the things that I missed, didn't know, and needed to know. And as I learned those, cleaned those up, used that as my new knowledge. So knowing what you know and what you don't know about everything, there's things we don't know. Everything. So what do you not know? And so asking people who might know, who've been through the experience, reading extensively to find out what you don't know and what you need to know. Next slide. Expose your hidden assumptions. So what are you assuming? So we all make assumptions, presuppositions that guide us. So now it's time to use your skepticism and to start doubting. Doubt that your assumptions are true and start questioning them. And when you start questioning them, it helps you to now look at those trouble places where certain variables can arise that you didn't even anticipate. So challenging your own assumptions. Number 5, the next skill, is try out your imagined future. And now we're asking you to use your imagination, play out a scenario in your mind of how things will work out, what you'll do, what you need to do, how people need to respond. Play out that scenario, play it out from the inside, play it out from the outside, and use your imagination so that you can learn in that way to create a better future set of actions that you need to take. The next one, number 6, formulate a prediction. So predict. Make a prediction. Make a small prediction. I do it all the time. For years and years, I predicted this training is going to result in this and this and this, and here are some other effects that it will have or consequences that will arise. Afterwards, and I wrote it down, I wrote each one of those down. Afterwards, I looked at it to see, did it happen or not? Where did I accurately describe and the prediction came true, and where did I miss it completely? And when I missed it completely, I would ask, okay, so what happened that I didn't take into account? What do I need to start taking into account? And out of that, I wrote contracts for sponsors. I wrote contract for my renters. So when things went wrong and I did not anticipate anybody would do that. Now I have new knowledge that I could make better and better predictions based upon likelihoods and probabilities. This means diving deep into the details, and that's our next slide. And if you're a global person, I know you're going to hate this one, diving into the details. And so the more details, you'll ground it in reality. And so how much detail do I need to know about loans, mortgages, um, contracts with people? And so diving deep into the details, then you can really deal with the risks. And that's our next one, managing for risks. Low risks. So the question is, what are you risking? When I went into the real estate, how much am I risking in terms of my time? Time for reading, for understanding, for negotiating with people, for writing contracts. How much energy, how much money am I putting down and risking? Resources, personnel, reputation. And this is what we mean by doing due diligence, to look at what it's going to cost and all the factors involved. And even when you're done, you're not done. And so number 9, iterate continuously. Just keep working on your predictive skills and all the different facets of thinking and resourcing and patterning that's going to help you to create the kind of future that you want to have. So our next slide, go boldly into your desired future. And you notice I've got a blank sheet here. And so the future has not been written. That's up to you. And so write a great one. And with that, we're ready for questions.
So now is a good time. If you have any questions, feel free to write them into the chat. I have one question here from Malaysia. And the question is, what is the difference between, or the distinction between predictive thinking and strategic thinking? Because we can anticipate what will be happening and therefore take precautions as a strategy.
Well, strategic thinking is what we've been describing with planning, with the 7 powerful planning questions, with using your intentionality, with the well-formed outcome questions. You're strategically planning for the future. Just be sure, take into consideration all the probabilities, all the variables that could undermine it, and do the risk management.
So, Bruno, you're raising your hand. Do you have any question?
Yeah, no, it's not it's not really a question, but it's an insight that I had listening to you, Michael, that all of us who are sponsoring events like PCMC, ACMC, and STT, we have been through this predictive thinking. I mean, going through the list, I recognize all of that process. And maybe I've got a question. Maybe now I've got a question. Uh, for me, it seems almost natural to have done, to have been through these stages. But would you say that this is something that could be useful to teach to people to use predictive thinking?
Oh, definitely. And here, as the beginning of the slides, everybody's doing predictive thinking anyway. Most of them are just wishing and hoping, crossing their fingers, praying and not doing. And the only way to create the future, that you want is to create it, is to invent it. And that's where the well-formed outcome questions come in. So teaching people how to do it well. What people do not do well, they either overestimate and are overconfident about their abilities to make something happen, then it doesn't. Then they get disappointed. Then they get depressed. And then they don't know how to do good goal setting. Or they go the other way and they're pessimistic. And so they don't even try. And they just let events control them instead of them taking charge of the events of life. And so I wrote the book, Predictive Thinking, which is a PDF file on the shop. I wrote the book, Predictive Thinking, because people do need to be taught how to do this and do this well. And for any of the trainers listening, we do have a predictive training 3-day course on teaching people how to do this more effectively. Organizations need this a lot because they're always mispredicting what's going to happen, and they're missing trends, and they're not catching the new things that are rising, and they're not doing due diligence. And so businesses go out of business. So yeah, the people need to be taught how to do predictive thinking well.
So we have a question from Ashvina in the chat. Does predictive thinking mean not listening to our gut feeling, or is it related?
Unless you've got 10 years of experience in a specialty, do not listen to your gut. If you don't have 10 years of experience training in a specialty, medicine, law, counseling, psychology, if you don't have 10 years experience, your gut is not telling you the truth. Because that intuition is not trained. Intuition has to be trained. And this is the message of Anders Ericsson in his longitudinal studies on expertise. It is what Malcolm Gladwell described in his book on Blink, that if you got 10 years experience of trained, then your intuitions will be true. But without 10 years of training, without 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, your intuition is not going to be true. And don't listen to it. It's lying to you. It's just a feeling, and it's not based upon neurons that have been wired together, firing together, wired together in an associative way.
Yeah,
Now
so we have to.
That's my next book. Next year, when thinking goes deep into kinesthetic sensations and intuitions, that'll be the book that'll be delivered next year. And the title is When Thinking Goes Deep.
Okay, yeah, so we have to train our intuitions, so to speak. And that was also answering the question from Russia about predictive thinking and intuition. So next question, Tamer Salama, you were raising your hand. So do you have a question?
I cannot unmute myself, I think. Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, as per the countries. Okay, Dr. Michael, there is a way, I think there is a way to link between the predictive thinking, strategic thinking, and set goals and our meanings.
You're asking if there is a way to link it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all related. Predictive thinking is thinking into the future about events that are going to happen. Strategically, we can start to plan for those events. And that's what we do when we think strategically. I'm going to create this business. So what do I have to need to do? What do I need to know? Knowledge. What skills do I need? And all of that's going to be meaningful if it's significant to you. That's why we ask the why question. Why is this important? Because if it's not important to you, then you won't do it. But if it's important to you, then you're more likely to have the motivation, the energy to carry out the actions that's going to occur. All of that is within inside yourself. Now you have to work and recognize the social context. When I do this, do I need somebody to be a partner? Do I have the social skills to interact with the people that I'm planning this business with? So all of that's interconnected, and it begins with the intentionality, the intentionality of what you want to create, and then the strategy of how you do it.
Okay, so we can make it as a layers. Can you explain to us as a layers which one we have to start with, then what's second, third, fourth, something like that?
So I would recommend the well-formed outcome questions as the answer. So the 18 questions, what do you want? So that sends it off into the future. What do you want? Why is that important to you? Question 3. So now we get the intentionality. When and where and with whom? Questions 4, 5, and 6. So that grounds it in reality. Question 7, what do you have to do to get what you want? Questions 11 through 13, do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy? What feedback do you want? 14 is what would stop you? So the well-formed outcome questions is an audacious way to create the future that you want. And that's why we use it in coaching. It's why we use it as a key tool in any kind of work like coaching or therapy or counseling to help people now create the future that they want.
Okay, so we have some more questions here. There is one that I think is really interesting. If someone has a pessimistic meta-program and is very cautious when thinking about the future, how can we help? How can we help them approach predictive strategic thinking?
Well, I would work on changing that pessimistic meta program first of all, and change it to change it to where you can be pessimistic when that's appropriate, and you can be optimistic when that's appropriate, and not stuck in one or the other. Because if you're stuck in one or the other, you're going to have problems. And so being able to have that shift. Second, the more you know of a subject, the more confident you'll be. The more confident you'll be, the more willing you are to take a risk. And then you can do the risky conversation by looking at what's at risk, how much can I risk, and being willing to take a risk to create the future you want. So the more knowledge you have, the better. So when I created my publishing company, when I started, I didn't know anything about publishing companies. So I did a lot of interviews with people who owned publishing companies. And then I did some book reading to understand the, the knowledge and the skills that are needed. So once I understood and had that knowledge and interviewed some people who did it, I was much more confident to take the risk. So uh, to get out of that pessimistic mindset is to, first of all, raise your knowledge, raise your skills, and then have the willingness to trust your own knowledge and skills to take action, because that's the only way you're going to learn. To take the action and get the feedback.
So we have time for one more question here. So we have one from Vera Umbara. Predictive thinking, does it mean that we judge things? And if it does not, what is the difference?
Well, sure, we judge things. We make an evaluation of the facts. So judgment, it's how the brain works. You're making comparisons. You're evaluating things by the values that you have. And so we ask the question, what do you want? And why is that important? These are values. These are judgments, evaluations. Now, that's different from judgmentalism, when you're going around trying to put others down, put yourself down. That's not the same thing. Judgment is a healthy state of mind if it's based upon facts and values.
Okay, so Jason, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, we could get one last question in here.
Because there is one more question in the chat, so let's not leave it. It's from Russia Tibian. I heard about the remote viewing recently. Is that related to predictive thinking?
No, and it's full of nonsense, and it's been proven to be full of nonsense. The United States government looked at NLP and remote viewing way back in the 1980s and 90s, and they realized that it was just a bunch of nonsense. It's hard enough to remote view any other person's state of mind. We call that mind reading. You can't do that. It's hard enough to remote view your own thinking and feeling and know yourself. It's just a bunch of nonsense. It's one of the ways that NLP has discredited itself with this remote viewing. So I would say, anytime you see that stuff, just trash it. It's worthless. It's no good. It has nothing to do with the future. If people could do remote viewing, we would find out where the Ayatollah is today and end that war in Iran. If we could do that, we would identify where Putin is and see if we can end that war. There's no such thing as remote viewing. And it's just nonsense.
Okay, thank you. So I hand it over to you, Jason.
Fantastic. So what a great session so far. And it's just ready to transition now into the breakout groups. So what we've got coming up is some Zoom room experiences. I imagine whoever is managing the Zoom room will be able to do those breakout groups. And you're going to go into groups. You're going to discuss these two questions. So what aspects of predicting the future has most impacted you? Why and what have you learned? And the second question here is, knowing that we cannot predict the future in any absolute way, what are you taking away from this session that will empower you to face your future, given that you can't predict it absolutely? And so I'm going to type these questions in the chat so you have them. Whoever is here managing the Zoom room can set up those breakout groups. Here they are in the chat. And just when you get into your room, just take a moment just to introduce yourself if you don't know the others. So say your name, where you're from, what institute you're from, and have a nice discussion. You have about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to the main room and hear what you're taking away from that breakout room. So I believe that the queue is out in the room. So click on choose your breakout room and click join when you're ready. And we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. We're waiting on. Welcome back, everybody. I think we're just waiting on a couple more people to get kicked out of their breakout rooms. They're having so much fun that they don't want to leave. And so welcome back. Good to see you guys. Oh, there's some faces. They do have cameras working. Okay, good to see everybody. Hello. So, well, what we're going to do now is just take a couple of minutes. If you would like to unmute or type in the chat, how was the breakout room? What are you taking away from that discussion? Please let us know. Curious how it went for you. In our breakout group, we had some people who were frustrated by the fact that they can't absolutely control the future, and also some people who were excited for the challenge of getting better at predicting. How about in your group? Anything worth bringing back to the main room here? How'd it go? Before we go to the next breakout group. Feel free to raise your hand or unmute if you can. Yeah, Bruno?
Yeah, I think there were quite some insights in our group. For example, someone said that it was like a change of mindset. Instead of seeing the future as uncertain, and so I'm using my words, but what she said was listening to Michael, that brought hope that she can now be more in control of the future. And I also mentioned the fact that when Michael talked about the law of thermodynamics, more entropy, that you can counter that by planning, by designing your future, and by taking control. And that was a great insight.
Thank you, Bruno. Yeah, I had a similar insight, the power that the action can take. So it's not just about predicting what can happen, but taking an active role in creating it. Okay, so Tamer raised his hand here. Feel free to unmute yourself, Tamer.
Okay, Jason, there is one insight happened in our room also that Heba, she said that if I'm not planning, the negative thoughts will control me. It was like, again, there is another choke for me. So she didn't complete because the room canceled, but it was very important like this.
Yeah, sounds like that countering the entropy is planning and making things happen rather than letting things just fall apart naturally. And so taking an active role again. Slavica, feel free to unmute yourself, and then we're going to go into the next breakout group with some more questions.
In our group, there are, of course, skills were mentioned as variables, beliefs, and mindset. Then the link of the predictive and strategic thinking. But Xanti, for example, mentioned the meta program. And I find it really sort of big that we can change, especially for me, since I'm very, very, very global. The thing that I can just adjust it and really make a tool to improve that and to go with a lot of confidence into the details Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
So expanding meta programs. And so we're ready, I think, for the next breakout room, yeah? So we've got 2 more questions for you guys here. I'm going to type them in the chat so you have access to them. And I will just quickly share on the screen here so you can see them on the big screen. And so our next Zoom room experience, we have 2 more questions for you here. So do you find the future more scary or exciting, just in general? Why is that? So what beliefs or experiences have led you to think that way about the future and to create those meanings? And then the second question here is, what would you like as your best attitude when facing the future? And so I typed those in the chats, same thing. I don't know if we'll be in the same room or different rooms, but feel free to take a minute to introduce yourself, where you're from, what institute you're a part of, and then we'll meet you back here in about 10 minutes after this second discussion to hear your takeaways and insights. So feel free to set up the breakout rooms now, and you can click your way into them. They are ready. Welcome back again. Good to see you guys. All the Egyptians are quick to get back. Look at that. They're the fastest back. What does that say? Hello, welcome back. Welcome back. Good to see you guys. Let's see here. So, how was that for you? What can you bring back to the big group from your experience? More scary, more exciting? What was the general consensus of your group? Anything you'd like to share about attitudes? There's the timer. I would say in our group, we were, for the most part, optimistic about the future.
So in our group, we had some people, we were mixed, positive and negative, especially about events happening in the world today. And just as we were ending, I was saying something that corresponds to the serenity prayer, that the things you can change, change them. The things you can't change, if you're worrying and fretting and just being pessimistic and negative and you're letting it paralyze you, you're just making a really bad choice. And that's where acceptance comes in. We can't change everything. We can't control everything. And so we accept what we can't change and then focus on what we can. And that gives us the wisdom to discern between them.
Ashvina, please unmute yourself and speak up.
Yeah. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what came out for us in our group is there is some kind of being scared at times, but still going for it and making it happen and having this can-do attitude and taking up challenges. And what is the best attitude? So we all agree about being gloriously fallible, and there is no failure. There's only feedback.
Yeah.
And yeah, let me add to that. We were in the same group. When we were talking about feeling scared or excited about the future. It was really also context dependent, because when it comes to the state of the world, yeah, we have some doubts about about it. But when it comes to doing, for example, the trainings and jumping into new situations, I think everybody felt excited more than scared, even if it can also sometimes be scary if it is an overwhelming thing to do.
We have a comment in the chat here from Poi. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. She's very thankful to have Dr. Michael in their group. It's kind of comforting, as resilience skills are truly important to deal with things that we cannot control. So that's what Poi has to share. And so, well, we're getting towards the end here. As we are winding down and wrapping up for today, well, first thing, I would love to invite Michael to share some final words on the subject. Could you share with us about the predictive thinking in closing, Michael?
So there's many futures. All of us have our own personal future. What is your personal future? What can you do to make it the way you want it to, so it fits your values and your beliefs, and that you can strategically and intentionally face that future with confidence, with joy, with acceptance, with resilience. Then there's the future of your country, the future of the world. A lot of that future we can't affect individually, but together, as all of us are trying to be the best persons we can be, bring out the best in others, we are and can change the world and the direction of the human race so it can be more loving and caring. Ideally, we move into a future with no wars and with the ability to work out conflicts. And when we can do that individually, and we can help other people do it, it helps all of us to do it. And it begins to give us hope that there's hope for the human race. And we don't have to just always be in the jungle fighting like animals. So as you go into the future, may you go in facing that future with hope, with resilience, with persistence, and with a dedication to do your very best and help others do their best.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for being here. In a moment, we're going to take a group photo, so please turn on your cameras for the group photo. While that's getting set up, I'd love to hear your takeaways in the chat. What is your biggest takeaway, or what's an action that you're going to take based on this session? Feel free to type that in the chat while we're setting up for the group photo.
We're ready for the photo. Are you all ready? Ladies, you look pretty. No need to fix your hair. Just turn on your camera. Perfect. Okay, so ready? Say cheese. 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. Thank you. You got the picture.
So, any announcements, Tarek, about or Michael, about upcoming events or the next session, wisdom session?
The next wisdom session will be on meta thinking, thinking about your thinking and how to use it to really inform and create much higher quality thinking overall.
Ooh, well, I'm excited for that one. And so everybody feel free to unmute if that's possible. I don't know how to make invite to unmute. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks for the next session, if not sooner. So good to see you. Thank you again so much, Michael, for putting on these events for us. Thank you, everybody, for coming up, participating, engaging, and showing up. And I look forward to seeing you real shortly. Take care, everybody.
And
Thank
thank
you
you.
soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everybody,
Thank
take
you.
care.
Thank you.
And looking forward to seeing you in Egypt, whether online or in person for the NLP training.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Good to see you.